I was halfway down the hallway when I heard my name, not in the usual way. Not that soft, distracted mom tone you hear when they need something, but sharp, whispered, like they didn't want me catching it. Before I tell you the rest, make sure you subscribe and like this video. It helps me share more stories like mine. Anyway, I froze right there beside the stairwell. The door to the den was cracked open, light spilling through. Just enough for me to see shadows moving inside. You can't just say it out loud. My son's wife, Denise, hissed, and then my son, my own son, said, "Well, what do you want me to call it? We both know she can't keep living here much longer. If she just slipped on the stairs, no one would question it." I remember my heart thudding so hard I thought they'd hear it. Denise laughed a little, that nervous kind of laugh she does when she's in over her head. "You're talking crazy, Jake," he said. "Crazy's paying her medical bills every month while she sits on the deed to this house." That's when it hit me. That's what it was all about. The house. The same house I'd worked 30 years to pay off after his father died. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Denise whispered, "If you're serious, you better make it look like an accident." "Yeah," Jake said. "That's the plan." I backed up slow, every board in that hallway groaning under my feet like it was tattling on me. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed until sunrise. Didn't cry, didn't scream, just sat there listening to every creak in the house, wondering which one was going to be the last sound I ever heard. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to die on those stairs. Not for a son who saw me as a problem instead of a person. But I wasn't going to run either. Not yet. You learn a lot living as long as I have. One of those lessons is, never let the enemy know you're awake. So I made breakfast, like nothing happened. Jake came down wearing that fake smile he'd been using since his father's funeral. "Morning, Ma," he said, pouring coffee like we were any normal family. "Morning," I said, steady as I could manage. "You sleep all right?" He said, "Yeah, fine." "You?" I smiled right back. "Never better." Denise came in a few minutes later, all perfume and smiles, pretending to help me set the table. Every move she made looked rehearsed. Too nice, too careful. And the whole time, I just kept thinking about those stairs. How easy it would be to give one push. How quick it would be over. But they didn't know me like they thought they did. I've survived worse than greed. The next morning, I kept to my usual routine so they wouldn't sense a thing. I made my coffee, fed the old tabby cat, and pretended to study the newspaper even though I wasn't reading a word of it. From the kitchen window, I could see the driveway where Jake's truck sat, half-washed. A habit he'd picked up from his father but never finished. It was funny. He copied the motions but not the patience. They left for work around 8. As soon as their car disappeared down the road, I locked the front door and went straight to the stairs. The steps were carpeted, soft beige, but the wood underneath creaked in a few spots, one about halfway up where the nail had loosened over the years. I pressed my foot there and felt it dip slightly. If somebody wanted an accident, that'd be the perfect place to start. I spent the next hour going through the house. Old habit from when Ray used to travel. I liked knowing where everything was. What looked off? The railing felt rough under my palm, freshly sanded. That stopped me cold. I ran my hand along the banister again, smooth in some parts, grainy in others, like someone had been working on it recently. I checked the bottom screws. Loose. Jake had been fixing that railing last week. Said it was for safety. Now I knew better. I made myself a note. Stop trusting convenience. By lunchtime, I had a plan. Nothing wild, just careful watching. I'd pretend not to notice anything, act frail like they expected, and wait to see how far they'd take it. Maybe record something if I could manage the phone camera right. At 3 that afternoon, I heard their car pull back up. I put the kettle on so it'd look like I'd been doing tea instead of snooping around. They came in talking low. Denise was saying something about insurance. I stayed still, listening to their shoes cross the hallway. "Did she go out today?" Denise asked. Jake said, "Nah. She's been sitting here all day. I told you she doesn't leave the house anymore." "Good," she whispered. "Makes it easier." I lifted my cup so they wouldn't see my hands shake. "Tea?" I asked, stepping into the doorway. They both jumped like kids caught smoking behind the barn. Denise laughed first. "Oh, you startled me, Mom." Jake smiled too wide. "Yeah, we were just talking about, home insurance, with the storm season and all." "Smart," I said. "Wouldn't want the house falling apart." Denise poured herself a cup, watching me over the rim. "You feeling okay today? You look tired." "Old bones," I said. "They creak more than the stairs." That line must have landed harder than I meant, because Jake's eyes flicked to the staircase behind me. "Quick, guilty." After dinner, they went upstairs early. I waited till the lights went out, then slipped into the hall and checked the railing again. One screw was missing now, gone completely. My heart pounded, but I kept quiet. I slept in the armchair that night, facing the stairs. The next morning, Jake came down all cheery. "You sleep down here?" he asked. "Back's been bothering me," I said. "Figured I'd stay close to the kitchen." He nodded, trying to read me. "You know, Ma, if it gets worse, we could move your room downstairs. Maybe that old storage room near the basement." There it was. The nudge. The slow relocation before the accident. I smiled like I didn't catch it. "We'll see." When they left, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Phelps. She was old school, still used a landline and still believed in minding other people's business for the sake of safety. "Just wanted to check in," I said. "In case something happens around here, you'd notice, right?" She chuckled. "Something like what?" "Oh, I don't know. Maybe a noise, maybe me falling." That quieted her. "You all right, Nancy?" "I'm fine," I said. "Just making sure someone's paying attention." By evening, Denise came home alone. She said Jake was working late. She made pasta, poured herself wine, and turned on music, trying to play normal. I stayed quiet through dinner. Around 9, she said, "Why don't you head up, Mom? You look beat." "Soon," I said. "Want to finish this show first?" She yawned fake and went upstairs. 10 minutes later, I heard her heels click down the hallway, then stop near the railing, metal scraping, screwdriver turning. I turned off the TV and stood in the dark, watching her silhouette lean over the banister. She loosened something, then walked back down the hall. When her bedroom door closed, I exhaled. That was enough proof for me. I wasn't sleeping another night under their roof. I didn't pack much, just my wallet, a change of clothes, and the little tin box with Ray's wedding ring in it. Everything else could stay right where it was. At dawn, I slipped out the back door, leaving a note on the kitchen table that said only, "Taking a walk. Don't wait up." The street was still damp from overnight rain. The sky a dull gray that made every house look half asleep. I walked until I hit Main Street and ducked into the bus station. Nobody pays attention to an old lady there. They just assume you're visiting family. I bought a one-way ticket to town, 15 miles away, where the diner sat that everyone passed but never really noticed. When I stepped off the bus, the first thing I did was find a payphone. Called Mrs. Phelps again. "Don't tell Jake I called," I said. "If he asks, just say you haven't seen me." She hesitated, but she's known me 40 years. "You want me to call the sheriff?" "Not yet," I said. "Let's see what he does first." I rented a cheap room at the roadside motel. Thin walls, bleach smell, buzzing light. But it had a lock I controlled. That was enough. All that day I watched the road from the window, waiting for a familiar truck to appear. Around evening my phone buzzed with voicemail after voicemail. First Denise pretending to worry, then Jake sounding half angry, half scared. "Ma, where are you? You can't just disappear like that. Call me back." Then another. "We called the cops. They're looking. Please, we just want to make sure you're okay." "Sure. I kept those messages. Figured they might be useful later." 2 days passed. On the third morning there was a knock on the motel door. I froze, then looked through the peephole. Not Jake, just a young cop. I cracked the door open. "Ma'am, you Nancy Reynolds?" "Used to be," I said. "Your son filed a missing person report." "I'm not missing," I said. "I'm hiding in plain sight." He blinked. "From who?" "From the guy who filed the report." He looked uncomfortable. "You want to make a statement?" "Not yet. Just note I'm alive." He wrote something on his pad and left. That evening I called my lawyer. Well, Ray's old lawyer, Mr. Landers. Still had his number in an old address book. He sounded surprised to hear from me. "Didn't expect your son to be the one in trouble," he said after I explained. "You signed over power of attorney to him last year, remember?" "Because he said it was for my hospital forms," I answered. "Then you need to revoke it right away." So the next morning I walked to his office downtown. Took me 3 buses and a long climb up broken stairs, but I did it. Landers drew up new papers that stripped Jake of any authority over my estate. I signed with a steady hand. "Make sure he gets a copy," I told him. Walking back through town, I stopped by a thrift store and bought an old flip phone with prepaid minutes. No GPS, no apps, nothing fancy. I figured if Jake wanted to track me, he'd have to guess. By the end of the week, I started feeling like myself again. Cooked instant soup on the motel's hot plate. Watched reruns on the tiny TV, nobody knocking, nobody whispering. Peace, even if it smelled like mold. On Friday night, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. My stomach sank. 2 figures sat inside. The engine stayed running. I couldn't see faces through the tint, but I knew. I turned off my light and waited. After a while, the SUV pulled out, slow, circled the lot once, then left. I didn't sleep after that. Next morning, I checked out, left through the back door, and walked to the diner at the edge of town. Same kind of place every highway has. Cracked leather booths, burnt coffee, radio humming old country songs. The waitress, Ellie, asked if I wanted breakfast. "Just coffee," I said. She poured it black. That's when the idea hit me. If Jake wanted an accident, maybe I should give him one. But the kind that landed him in handcuffs. I called Mr. Landers again. If I recorded him admitting what he planned, would that count for anything? "Absolutely," he said. "But be careful how you get it." That night I called Jake from a payphone outside the diner. He picked up on the second ring. "Ma? Jesus, where have you been?" "Thinking," I said. "I might come home. We should talk first." He sighed with relief. "Of course. Come home, we'll fix this." "No, not home. Meet me by the park gazebo tomorrow at noon." He hesitated, then agreed. The next day, I tucked the recorder from the motel desk into my purse. Jake showed up right on time, alone, pretending to smile. "Good to see you," he said. "You too," I lied. We sat on a bench. I talked about Ray, about missing him, about maybe selling the house myself. Jake relaxed, started rambling. How hard bills were, how the mortgage on their new place was killing him, how Denise was pushing him. Then he said it, quiet but clear. "You don't understand, Ma. We were desperate. I didn't mean for it to go that far. That far." I kept my voice calm. "So you really thought about it?" He rubbed his face. It was stupid talk. "I'd never—" "But you loosened the railing." His head snapped up. "What?" I checked. He stared at me, and in that second I saw every excuse die in his throat. I stood. "Don't follow me." He didn't. Back at the diner, I called Landers again and left the recording in his Dropbox. Told him to keep it safe in case something happened to me. Then I bought another bus ticket, this time to a town that no one in my family had reason to visit. As the bus pulled away, I looked out the window and saw Jake's truck parked by the gas station, engine running. He didn't see me. He was looking the other way. For the first time in weeks, I almost smiled, because he'd already lost. I didn't tell anyone my new address. The town was small, maybe 3,000 people if you counted the strays. My motel room this time was cleaner, cheaper, and nobody asked questions when I paid cash. I got a job washing dishes at the diner after a week. Ellie vouched for me. "Nancy's good people," she told the manager. He shrugged, said, "We could use another pair of hands." And that was that. I worked the lunch shift mostly. The steam, the clatter of plates, the smell of grease. It all blurred the noise in my head. Nobody knew who I was. Just another tired woman trying to stretch her paycheck. At night, I'd walk the few blocks back to the motel, stop by the gas station for milk or bread, and lock the door behind me. I never told anyone about Jake or Denise. It was easier that way. Pretend they were gone. Pretend I didn't spend every night wondering if they'd show up. I figured they'd move on once they realized I wasn't coming back, and that they'd lost everything when the lawyer froze my estate. But I was wrong. 3 months later, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name written in Jake's handwriting. My stomach turned before I even opened it. Inside, 1 page. Short, rushed. "You win, Ma. Hope you're happy. The house is gone. Denise left. I'm done fighting. That was it. No apology, no love. Just a note from a man drowning in his own greed. I wanted to tear it up, but I couldn't. I folded it neatly and stuck it under my pillow like some kind of curse. A week later, Mrs. Phelps called the diner. I didn't even know she knew where I worked. Ellie handed me the phone, said it was urgent. Her voice cracked. "Nancy, I just heard. About Jake." I gripped the receiver. "What about him?" He shot himself last night." The plate I was holding slipped out of my hand and shattered on the floor. Everyone turned, but I didn't hear them. I just stared at the phone, listening to that silence on the other end. Mrs. Phelps said, "They found him in the truck. Left a note for the police. Said it was all his fault. Said you'd never forgive him." I hung up. Didn't say a word. That night I sat outside the motel on the little plastic chair, looking at the road. There were no tears left. You think grief gets easier the more you live, but it doesn't. It just gets quieter. It hides behind the things you still have to do. Go to work, pay rent, eat something, breathe. A week later, Denise called. I didn't answer the first time. She left a message. Your son's dead because of you. I deleted it. But she called again, over and over. The last one she left was just her crying. We lost everything, she said. Are you happy now? Happy. What a word. I never called her back. The sheriff came by the diner a few days later to hand me some papers. You're the next of kin, he said. We need your signature to release the body. I stared at the pen in his hand. He's already gone, I said. What's left to release? But I signed anyway. Someone had to. The funeral was small. Denise didn't show. Just me, Mrs. Phelps, and the pastor, who didn't know Jake at all. It was raining, the kind of steady drizzle that soaks through your bones. The pastor said words I couldn't hear. I just looked at the coffin and thought about the stairs back home. How he used to run up and down them as a boy, chasing toy cars and yelling for dinner. It's strange how a person can live a whole life between the same walls and still die a stranger. After the service, I stayed behind. The gravediggers waited a few yards away, giving me space. I put my hand on the coffin and whispered, You didn't have to do this, Jake. Then I walked away before they lowered him down. I didn't go back to the motel right away. I just walked. Through wet streets, past the house where he grew up. My house, now boarded up and sold by the bank. A for sale sign leaned crooked in the yard. The garden was gone. The swing set rusted. It didn't look like home anymore. It looked like a memory someone had left out in the rain too long. I stood at the gate, the same one I used to open when Jake came home from school. Backpack half unzipped. Shoes muddy. I waited for that sound again, that echo of a life that doesn't exist. But all I heard was wind, so I turned and kept walking. The next few months blurred together. I stayed at the diner, kept my head down. Sometimes the new cook, a kid named Mark, would try to make me laugh. He said I reminded him of his grandma. I smiled when he said that, but inside it hurt. Because if I reminded him of his grandma, what did my granddaughter see when she looked at me? Someone to bury, someone in the way? Time didn't fix anything. It just dulled the edges. The nightmares stopped, but the silence stayed. Then one day, while wiping tables after the lunch rush, I saw a young man walk in with a baby in his arms. The little girl looked just like Jake did at that age. Same brown eyes, same stubborn chin. For a second, my chest tightened. I almost dropped the rag. He asked for a high chair and ordered pancakes. I brought them over and smiled. She's beautiful, I said. He grinned. Yeah, she's my world. When he said that, I had to step away before the tears came. Because once my son was my world, too. And somewhere between loving him and losing him, I forgot how to live for myself. That night, I packed my bag again. Left the job, left the town. Took a bus heading nowhere in particular. I don't even know why. Maybe I was looking for peace, or maybe I just didn't want anyone to remember me when I was gone. I ended up in a small coastal town where nobody asked where you came from. Rented a room above an old hardware store. I'd sit by the window at night, watching the ocean chew at the rocks below. And I'd think about Jake. About how a mother's love doesn't die when her child does. It just becomes something heavier. Something you carry forever. One morning, a letter came addressed to me. No return name again. Inside was a check, $500, and a note written in a child's scrawl. Grandma Nancy. Mom said this was Daddy's. She said you might need it more than we do. Love, Sarah, Sarah. my granddaughter. I stared at that note for a long time, didn't cry, didn't smile, just folded it neatly and put it beside Jake's first letter under my pillow. That night I dreamt I was back on the stairs, only this time I wasn't falling. I was climbing. Each step creaked beneath my feet, and at the top I saw Jake standing there, just like he used to look before life hardened him. He didn't speak, he just nodded, like he understood. When I woke up, the sun was coming through the blinds. I sat up slow, holding the note from Sarah in my hands. Maybe she'd grow up kind. Maybe she wouldn't. Maybe she'd remember me, maybe not. That's life. It forgets you even when you never forget it. I took one last look at the ocean that morning and whispered to the wind. You got what you wanted, didn't you, Jake? You got your piece. I hope it's enough. And for the first time in a long while I didn't feel angry, just tired. I never made it back to that town again. Nobody ever found where I went after that. Some folks said an old lady was found sleeping on a bench near the pier, cold but smiling. Others said she took the early bus out before dawn, disappearing like she always meant to. Either way, I know what really happened. I just stopped trying to go home.